hoping that I'll win this time with you. We've tried in the past, hoping our love would last. Tell me what is wrong, why can't we get along? All my friends know that I love you, I know your love for me is true. Tell me why we always fight, maybe loving you just isn't right. Here we go again, trying our love again. Maybe it's a sin, but I still love you.
The Sundowners were Bob Boyd, Don Walls, and Kurt Delaney. Together they laid smooth cowboy harmonies over everything from Appalachian folk songs and Tin Pan Alley to swing and rock and roll. The threesome was said to know more than 15,000 songs. And together they became a local institution, playing 5 nights a week for a staggering 30 years at the Bar Double R in downtown Chicago.
Hi there, this is Don Walls on lead guitar. And Kurt Delaney on bass.
Bob Boyd on rhythm.
And we're the Sundowners.
Sail around, roll on to my lonely song. Carry me away from...
My name is Sue Boydston, and I met Bob in 1957 in one of the clubs that he played rhythm at. We got married in 1957, and he was basically a country lover, and I was a rock and roll, but we blend in together, and I just enjoyed every bit of it with him. And of course, I had to teach him how to dance, but we enjoyed each other from day one.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Walls. My husband's Don Walls of the Sundowners. I've been married to Don for about 44 years now.
Everybody in their life has one musical group that is meaningful, that means something to them. For me, it was the Sundowners. And for thousands and thousands of people in this area, I think it was the Sundowners.
Each of the Sundowners had their roots in the South. Sundowner bassist Kurt Delaney hailed from Moultrie, Georgia, where he first learned to play guitar. At age 16, he moved to Nashville and landed a job with Pee Wee King's Golden West Cowboys. Kurt left Nashville to pursue a career in radio, working shows in St. Louis, Baltimore, and Mason City, Iowa. Then in 1952, he got an offer from ABC to become a staff musician on Don McNeil's Breakfast Club in Chicago. Bob Boyd was from Chattanooga, Tennessee. He moved to Chicago with his mother when he was 8 years old. While just a teenager, Bob started working the honky-tonks on West Madison. Playing bass, rhythm guitar, and singing Western standards, he eventually made a home at the Southern Inn, a local tavern on Madison. Don Walls was born and raised in Logan, West Virginia. He learned to play guitar when he was 12 years old and began appearing on local radio stations by the time he was 16. 3 years later, Don joined the Air Force. While stationed in Maine, a fuel tank fell from an aircraft and crushed his knee. He received a medical discharge and was sent to Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C. for rehabilitation.
After he got out of the hospital, he was playing in some nightclubs and stuff there, and he met Curly Coliron, and he was from West Virginia. He had a group called the Circle C Boys, and he had asked Don to join that group, and that's when Don came to Chicago.
Curly Coliron and Don were playing with another rhythm player. His name was Conrad Street, and for some odd reason he was leaving the group. So Curly Coliron had gone down looking different taverns to find out who would blend in with their type of songs, and so they came down to a club called 3022. And my husband at that point was playing upright bass. Curly came in and talked about what all do you play. He said basically the rhythm, and he got up and sang, and he says, "Want a job? We got an opening for you." He says, "I want it." He says, "Well, you've got it."
In 1959, Curly Cold Iron retired, and Kurt Delaney replaced him on bass. They dropped the name the Circle C Boys and together formed the Sundowners, starting a 30-year run at the Bar Double R.
What can I do? Where will I find you? When I wish I knew. What have I done? Where have you gone? When will trouble move on? My baby.
It was originally the Ringside Ranch. It was the Ringside Ranch because the original owner was former welterweight boxing champion Barney Ross.
Oh, first time you walk in the club, the first thing you hear is background country music, and you walk down the stairs and you see all these different arts, leather carvings they have on the walls, and the waitresses and everything are all dressed country styling and very sweet and very homey. And it's just some place you go in, you don't want to leave.
The menu at the ranch was like no other. I mean, where else can you get chili perch? Where else can you get some of the things that were on this menu?
I want to say the menus probably had maybe 15 to 25 different type of chilies. Chili cheeseburger, chili hot dogs.
The chili was Texas chili, no beans. It was meat chili. And they would put that chili on top of anything. Salami, perch, chicken. They would have put it on ice cream, I guess, if anybody had asked for it. You never knew on any given night who was going to be in town. They'd be in town on business. And when their business was concluded, they would head for the ranch. And they would close up the ranch at 4 in the morning and somehow go out and do their business the next day. And if they were in town a second night, right back to the ranch. If you were able to hang around until 4 in the morning when the guys were through, you'd go bowling or you'd go horseback riding. They live life in reverse. You know, we come home from work and we go to a movie. Well, they get through work at 4 in the morning, they go to a movie.
The Bar Double R and the Sundowners were often at the whim of commercial development in downtown Chicago. The original Ringside Ranch was located on North Clark. In 1962, the ranch and the Sundowners were forced to move to West Madison to make way for a City of Chicago parking lot. Then in the early 70s, an area bank expanded, forcing the Sundowners to move again, this time around the corner to West Randolph.
I allowed these eyes of mine to lead me into sin, made me think that I could love her true. Now she stands out in the cold, my heart won't let her in. There was only room enough for you. Wasn't I the foolish one? Lord above, what have I done? For her love, I tore our world apart. Now she's here, but it's no good. I don't care the way I should. Guess my eyes were bigger than my heart.
The Sundowners not only worked together 5 nights a week, for 35 years they stood together and they played music together as a trio. On their days off, they played golf together, or they would go out to Bob's and they would make little recordings together. And if none of this was possible, they would talk on the phone together. It was a very, very close friendship, very close.
Kurt Delaney, he was number one. He was kind of a comedian, and he liked to say a lot of cute jokes and so forth.
He had friends on all levels, everywhere, everything from the highest of the high to the lowest of the low. He loved people. People loved him. He was very genuine.
She took that footbridge way across the water, though she weighed 299. The old bridge trembled and disassembled and dumped her into the foamy brine.
Don Wall's a lot of fun to be around, and he also did a lot of teasing too. And
funny, kind, humorous, great humor. They all had humor.
Blowing bubbles way down the line, but I'm no swimmer, but were she slimmer, I might have saved Chunky Clementine.
Bob was basically, when I first met him, very, very shy. I think I let everybody know that I liked him before he let me know he liked me.
I don't think Bob ever really wanted to do anything in his life but play music, and this was typical of all three of them. They wanted to play music.
My husband, at one time, was a truck driver when he was very young and all that, but that was not his cup of tea. There was nothing but music, and when they used to go visit each other at different homes, they'd bring the guitars and sit down and have a little jam session, maybe in the other room while the girls were in there doing their gossiping or whatever. But as far as music was concerned, it was their life. They loved it. They could never get enough of it. And each time that they thought that they had a chance to make albums or write songs, they'd sit down and work together, and it was just part of their life. They loved it.
In the 1980s, the Sundowners' music caught hold with a new breed of country music fans. Slowly, more and more younger musicians discovered the ranch, the only place where they could hear true-to-life honky-tonk music in downtown Chicago.
It wasn't really until John Langford and the Mekons showed up, I think in 1986, that this bond was forged with the younger musicians.
The night we went down to see the Sundowners, we'd been to Alcala's on Chicago Avenue and spent all our PDs on cowboy shirts, cowboy hats, and everything. So we walked in the bar after a show. They saw us come in as they were playing, and as soon as we sat down, they immediately engaged us with sort of, hey, it looks like we got a band in here, you know, who are you guys? And look at that guy, he looks like he's the steel guitar player. Hey, look at him. Oh, I think we got this big guy, I think he's the singer. And, you know, we were laughing and having a drink, and it was really good-natured. And then they said, do you want to come up and play? We said, no, absolutely not. That's not going to work at all, you know. And we kind of went red and sat there. And in the end, horrified, we kind of got up on the stage and we played some songs with them, which was really terrifying. And the audience were, I don't know what the audience thought. And they kind of worked out, oh yeah, they're a punk rock band. They're not a country band, even though they're dressed like a country band.
Over time, the Sundowners bonded with a handful of younger musicians. The band's open stage policy gave artists such as John Langford and Robbie Folks a chance to try their hand at performing for a room full of country music fans.
They would always ask me to go up, and I would get up, and I'd actually done my homework and learned a few songs, some Buck Owens songs, some Merle Haggard songs, some Johnny Cash songs. I think it was the only way I would have ever been able to do the Waco Brothers or play any of that music in the States was because I had that experience. I wouldn't have had the confidence to even attempt country songs.
The first time I saw the Sundowners was I came to Chicago to see Buck Owens and Dwight Yoakam at the Chicago Theater down in the Loop. And a friend of mine who lived in Chicago said, you got to come to this bar afterwards. We'll go down and see this band. And we went down to the ranch, and as soon as I walked in the door, it was like I'd walked in that door 100 times before. It just immediately felt like home.
Man, anybody that heard the Sundowners, you know, it hit you that it was the force of something authentic and real and something you didn't expect to see in Chicago. And I think it's safe to say that anybody that was a repeat customer there wasn't coming back for any other reason than to hear those guys play.
The thing that I think resonates about the Sundowners is that you could tell that they were up there playing because they loved the music. And they did it every night for decades. And not because they're getting rich and not because they were going to get famous, but because the genuine love of the music and the genuine camaraderie of being up on the stage with each other and performing for people was so obvious. What inspired the Sundowners record was the fact that there was so much existing music by them that no one had ever heard. A lot of people in Chicago have heard of the legend of the Sundowners, but they weren't able to see him. It just seemed like a natural for us to put together the best of that and be a part of the country music continuum in Chicago that the Sundowners were such a huge part of.
Their sound was Well, I would say it was rooted in Western swing of the 40s, some of the Sons of the Pioneer stuff. Obviously, Don Walls was tremendously influenced by Chet Atkins, and then Merle Travis and Les Paul as well. So they were rooted in a lot of the sort of urbanized 40s and 50s country. And the vocal trio, which was sort of their trademark, I don't know what that compared to. I think that's kind of their own deal. I can't think of an analogous vocal trio in honky-tonk music.
Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, poor boy, you're bound to die. Well, now, boy, hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, poor boy, you're bound to die. Oh boy, you're bound to die. Oh boy, you're bound to die.
I think the Sundowners are interesting because they were much more typical of the way music was played throughout the last century. They weren't specialists. They weren't trying to do one thing. They would play anything. They would take any sort of music and put it into the context of what they did, you know? And they were urban. They were, you know, they were a country band, but they were basically, first and foremost, they were heavily urban, you know? It was a night spot in downtown Chicago. They were very open and very interested in what was going on around them.
From the beginning, the Sundowners agreed they would never tour. Kurt had decided long ago that life on the road was not for him, and Bob and Don were in the midst of raising families.
They had found each other. I think they had found the ranch. They had found their niche, and they were happy with us. They opened for just about every big name in the country music business. They opened for Ray Price, for Ronnie Millsap, for Ernest Tubb. They opened for a lot of huge names in country music. They had offers over the years, and they chose to stay where they were. And a prominent Chicago columnist by the name of Dave Hoekstra has referred to them as the Lords of the Loop, which basically, I think, in Chicago is what they were. They held it down in downtown Chicago. Even when all live entertainment had left downtown Chicago, when all the clubs had closed, the ranch, the Sundowners were still there.
In 1989, the Sundowners were forced to move again. This time they'd have to leave downtown. So they opened their own club in a nearby suburb. The formula remained the same, the Sundowners, Texas Chili, and Lone Star beer, but the new location proved to be too out of the way for their downtown fans. The club closed in 1992. That same year, Don Walls suffered a stroke and was no longer able to play guitar, signaling the end of the Sundowners' 30-year run.
It's very unusual for a person to have an occupation that they really enjoy. And they enjoy doing it well enough to where they enjoy going to work. And that they did.
We're gonna sing you a song about an old cowboy who never let go. He rode from town to town, year after year he rode the rodeo. But now he's busted and beat, but he won't take defeat, 'cause he's a dreaming cowboy. Ooh, he's a dreaming cowboy. Ooh, he's a dreaming cowboy. It's a long way back to his old homestead by the Rio Grande. It's a long way back to his shack by the red clay and sand. But now a bar stool is all that he can ride, so he's a dreaming cowboy. Ooh, he's a dreaming cowboy. Ooh, he's a dreaming cowboy.
Here we go again, trying our love again. Maybe it's a sin, but I still love you. Maybe it's a sin, but I still love you.